Thank you, honorable members. Please be seated. We shall resume. We shall resume the debate on the motion, and I now ask the Honorable Minister Brinley Horatio Bent, Minister of Home Affairs, to make his contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, honorable members, too, for an opportunity to join in this debate. Uh, Motion brought by Mr. Chair Duncan in respect to decriminalization of marijuana. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, my vision, my perception of our circumstances may be fairly limited. But I believe that the very fact that we're here debating such a motion, speaking to move the quantities of marijuana which persons could hold and not be criminalized for holding it from 15 to 500 grams, to 1.102 pounds, 20 times what it is today. Mr. Speaker, this is a parliament for sure of still an evolving democratic country, but the parliament has had many story debates, many interesting discussions, a lot of introspection, and serious views have been exchanged in relation to how we govern our country in a parliament, in a country which we own now. And we have the critical responsibility, Mr. Speaker, to make sure, as I always like to say, at the end of the day, for people like myself, when I'm gratefully dead, that I want to make sure that we hand over a better life to the next generation, a better life than we ourselves have had. But here it is, sir. We're launching, we're carrying on in a debate which disgraces this parliament. It disgraces the parliament. There's no way that this type of debate should be entertained in this parliament. It should have been struck down the minute it was proposed. It should have been struck down. And I'm glad that the honorable member reminded us, the honorable Minister of Education, Ms. Priya Manakchan, reminded us about sanctimonious gangsterism in her presentation. The impulses which give rise to this type of debate can only come from persons who want to continue the issue and to put it at risk in respect of continuing on a path of gangsterism. Still sanctimonious. It could come from nowhere else. I am surprised to sit here and hear young men, Honorable Sheriff Duncan, Honorable Figuera, and worse yet, Honorable Roysdale Ford, a lawyer who will stand up in this parliament here and support such a proposal and go to lengths and make all kind of antics as to why this type of proposal should be carried in this House. Mr. Speaker, it could not be that they have a consideration really of the impact of drugs on the families. Drugs of all kinds, but let's talk about marijuana. That persons who use marijuana, who are addicts, lead to the breakup of families by way of their thefts, by way of misbehavior, by way of disorderly conduct in the communities, and are a constant source of criminal behavior in the communities, and it impacts the families negatively. Many families, many persons will tell you that even if someone is in prison for seemingly a smaller amount of marijuana, greater than 50, it's not simply that the small amount that they were caught for this time that was the issue, but it was the repeated behavior which was noted in the courts in respect of their behavior at home and in the communities, jumping houses, stealing TVs, stealing stuff from their parents' homes, getting into fights, being aggressive on the streets, constantly doing things to get some kind of money to feed the habit. So many persons who are in the prison for seemingly small amounts for which they were charged have a long history as being miscreants, criminals, in respect of the type of behavior they have conducted in their communities, which negatively impacts the family, the communities, and the wider society. Mr. Speaker, the discussion which we want to go into really relates to the motion the Honorable Attorney General would want to bring in respect of this problem, in respect of the approach we have to take to this problem. It appears to me that the persons on the other side of Mr. Duncan's presentation, honorable member, of course, so named honorable, that he wants and that they want to run interference on the motion that is being brought by the Honorable Attorney General. They want to confuse the issue. They want to enter, to distract and deflect real debate on the issues and the proper approach towards this problem. Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Member, the Minister for Sport, spoke about the correlation between free availability, decriminalized availability of marijuana, its correlation between increasing crime and new users of drugs and wider and generalized use of drugs. I would have to point out, even in the little community in which I am, some years ago when we went to the area, took my wife and daughter and went across to the football ground, nice ground, lights, lot of energetic young men in the place. We could not stay there because people were stomping up and down, smoking marijuana openly. The spliffs the Honorable Minister of Education spoke of. And they didn't want any normal people, I suppose, around. because they thought that their behavior and the activities they wanted to continue with would not be accepted by us. So we haven't gone back there. Sport in the community has suffered. The togetherness, the unity, the development and building in the communities are damaged as a result of that. Because they're criminal networks, they're the users, they're the persons who want to keep people as addicts because all they care about is selling drugs. They have no interest in developing the communities, no interest in developing the family, no interest in developing the country. I'd like to ask the other side if that is the kind of behavior, if that is the kind of persons the bill, the proposal that they have is intended to relate to. It could only be, it could only be that demographic that they want to tie into, to lock into with the behavior, that kind of behavior. We have had a history in this country, a fairly recent, where the opposition, some time ago in government, elements amongst them joined up with criminal persons. We had the more fire, slow fire. We had a criminalized enterprises in Buxton and other places. We had a lot of difficulties, massacres and so forth. A lot of people got hurt. Our development was constrained. This is the kind of demographic, this is the kind of people that this bill would want to foster. This is the kind of people they want to support and develop. They have had, on the opposite side in government, 5 years in government, 5+5 or more in the recount process, in their attempts to rig elections in this country to undermine our democracy. And I hear them again talking again that they want to support and develop youth in Buxton, youth in Mocha, and other places. 5 years in which they did nothing for those people, and now they love them again, having done nothing for 5 years, having had every opportunity. Sanctimonious gangsterism. That is what this is about. You don't care about people. You care about yourselves. That's what you care about, who you care about. Mr. Speaker, one of the big problems here is the question of who runs the AP and UAFC. Why would persons, a lawyer like Honorable Member Harmon and Honorable Member Ramjatan, who I'm hoping will speak, why would they allow any junior member who just joined their ranks to bring such a proposal here on the floor of this House? It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. Sir, the problem we seem to have, Mr. Speaker, is that we have people, and particularly worrying young parliamentarians just joined, who are incapable of rational debate, who are incapable of proper introspection about their country, who are incapable of, who shouldn't be in this House if they bring such a proposal on the floor of this House. Should not be in this House. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, the bringing of this motion is one which is beyond any reason, any rational reason. No family, no community in this country will support it. No family and no community in this country will support that people can have over 1 pound of marijuana for themselves, and that is not a criminalizing holding of that those materials. No family, no community, no rational person, only criminals have an interest in that. And so, and so, any person who would bring this here has criminal impulses, irrational impulses. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Figueroa stood up in this house. Honorable member, still honorable, sir. And he said that 30,000 tons of cocaine were shipped out. Exactly. So that is what he implied. That is the implication shortly after we came to government. Mr. Speaker, our understanding of this problem is that the accumulation of the cocaine took several months, mostly during the period when the country was in a political impasse created by the attempts to rig, to undermine our democracy by the APNU AFC. That is when it happened. That is when the oversight was lost. Mr. Chairman, the only thing I could say really further to this matter is that the still honorable gentleman somehow should withdraw his motion, should let us bring back some semblance of rational thought and behavior and debate on the floor of this honorable house. I would be horrified, or I think any school kid coming up would be horrified to read the Hansard of this debate here today on this subject. But we know and we understand, and it's shameful and hurtful too, that young men who have entered the halls of this parliament, of this assembly, would behave in ways which I have to remind us of what Martin Carter said in one of his poems. Vultures practicing to wait. That is what we have here. That is the kind of behavior. Criminal impulses brought this motion to this floor of this house.
Point of order,
And
Comrade
it should
Speaker.
be denied completely.
Comrade Speaker, point of order. Standing Order 41-6. No member shall impugn improper motive of any member of the House, and that is exactly what the Honourable Minister just did, and we beg that it be withdrawn.
Honorable Minister, please. If you don't withdraw, we will have to strike it out.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw that remark in the expectation that the gentleman will modify their behavior and their debate in respect of this matter and as we go forward into other debates. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member and Deputy Speaker, Mr. Lennox Schumann.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and let me take this opportunity to wish all of my colleagues a very happy 2021, and may we never see the likes of 2020 again going forward in this country. 6,000 a millennia of science. That is how long indigenous peoples have gifted smoking to this world. And here we stand, and I feel privileged and honored to be the only indigenous person speaking on this motion in this parliament. It is an issue that dates back over 6,000 years for indigenous peoples. While we would have used cannabis, tobacco, a variety of other things for indigenous spirituality, we walk into the hallowed halls of this parliament only to see our spirituality getting bastardized, having gifted it to the world. It is science. You may not have recognized, or colleagues and friends and members of society may not have recognized the science that goes into this. We have always had a science-based approach. That is why it took so long to get to this point. And it took this country and the world 6,000 years to facilitate debate on what we had known all along. Finding ways to ensure that people do not abuse things that have been gifted to this world. I listen to my colleagues talk about presenting something to the public, in the public's interest, whatever disguise they wish. And I will say that at one point, the Rastafarian community was represented in the Liberty and Justice Party. And when they came on, they said, we want to see, to a certain extent, the legalization of cannabis because it is part of our religious identity. I said, this is something that has been presented to Parliament before, and it was presented at the time by an honorable member who is no longer in this hall. And when it was presented, the honorable member asked them, what is in it for me? So I find this bill not only offensive to the public, but also offensive to the people who depend on parliamentary representatives to address their issues in this House. The whole country should be offended. That if they give it to us, and we ask, the first question is, what is in it for me? Then I am not here to do the people's bidding, and it is hypocritical to bring such a motion to this floor today. We have always had a science-based approach to getting things done in this country. And I hope that we continue along that path. Look at what happened for just about every marijuana bill that has been tabled globally. Canada, they legalized marijuana, but why? Because it was science-based driven. They worked to first ensure that people who needed it could utilize it for medical purposes. We don't have such a framework or mechanism in Guyana. After that, they moved to decriminalizing it, to the point where they moved to legalizing it so that the public can now benefit from it. And marijuana is slated to be a $20 billion global industry. There's only one thing that travels at the speed of light, and that is light in itself. And it takes millions of light years to get anywhere across the galaxy. But we cannot, as a country, go from zero to the speed of light just because some disingenuous members decide that they want the country to go that way. We have to be very circumspect and very reasoned in how we move this country forward. In that regard, Mr. Speaker, I will be as brief as I possibly can and say that in order for us to support such a bill, that it has to be done with a science-based approach and it has to be incrementally to reflect the realities of the Guyanese society. We cannot sit there and permit all of our young people, permit all of our society to be walking around with 1 kilogram of marijuana every single day. When we get to that point, then all of our society descends into chaos.
Mr. Duncan, I would like to hear the Deputy Speaker, and I think he deserves a bit more respect.
Our structures start to deteriorate, our families start to fail, and the entire Guyanese society suffers from a systemic breakdown. This is not the point to come and play showmanship in Parliament. This is not the time to start driving society into breakdown as we almost witnessed last year. This is the time that we have to sit here and think about society and how we could benefit them, not watch society deteriorate and degrade into chaos. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to supporting a reasonable motion to address the issue of cannabis in Guyana. But this bill as is presented will not get my support. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Mr. Schumann, I now call on the Honorable Member, Mr. Kemraj Ramchatan, to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have to say that I unfortunately missed, although I heard it, I wasn't present when what was said by the previous speaker prior to Mr. Ben and Mr. Schumann. But I gather from what is being said by both of them that somehow they want to support the increasing of the amount of marijuana that could be carried in possession or use, and the numbers from what is existing. And in the case of Mr. Schumann, more specifically, by mentioning what happens in Canada, he wants to legalize, or any bill that will go towards legalizing the thing would be okay with him. And so it is important to understand, Mr. Speaker, that there is a little showmanship about that argument. Look, we must not forget what this bill or the motion that is seeking the amendment of an act that we have as existing as the law is seeking to do. It is seeking to, as best as possible, ensure that those who are caught with very small amounts, and the small amounts are, as in the existing law, like in the existing law, like Carl Mangal, who was caught with 8 grams, and he got 3 years jail. And that is exactly what I will address here. When I want to first of all give a little history. It is important that a lot of people are saying that we are sanctimonious gangsters. But you know, this bill and it's, the amendment to it was first brought by one Michael Carrington. Yes, the AFC member. And he had walked the streets and walked the villages, and the people were indicating that indeed this was a recommendation. And he brought it. We have to be proud of what Michael Carrington did. And he was no sanctimonious gangster. But you know, they now seek to bring some bill via the Attorney General, which will do something, the Honorable Member, the Attorney General, which will seek now to, in a way, increase to 15 to 30, or in that range, to make legal, and so that you will not get a custodial sentence. And we must say that that is a development from what we right now have. That is it. What we also did in view of the fact, and I want to state this for the record, that when the bill was brought, that amendment by Michael Carrington, we decided, because at a consulate level, that's a Caribbean institution that deals with matters of public security, they indicated that they are going to do a major study, CARICOM study, on marijuana, cannabis sativa, and drugs in general. And when it did that, its recommendations came out, I think, in the latter part of 2018. And they indicated that the recommendation is to legalize the thing. So I don't understand what Mr. Ben is indicating, Honorable Member. If you got, and we also wanted another report, which was from PAHO, I think, or WHO, their recommendation. And all of these major institutions that deals with these questions had studies done which recommend the legalization march. And that is why, knowing very well what the PPP thinks about this, and reflected by what Mr. Ben indicated, we have to now work around the situation, because they seem not to want to legalize at all. So we're not going to get the support of the Parliament. What is the next closest thing to legalization? Is increasing it by some such an amount that otherwise poor people, especially little black boys, are not going to be jailed, Mr. Hamilton. Understand that. And so don't behave, what you call us, like, you know, and you had 23 years to deal with at least this issue. You didn't do it with it. That what you call that? Gangsterism, clothed in sanctity. So we are now, what, sanctimony then? Whatever we are trying here, I want this entire Parliament, government benches and opposition benches, to understand what is the best and most purposive solution to the problem. If it is not the best, what is it that you propose? Bring it back down to 30 grams. So 30.5 grams, he still go to jail? Well, that is where the subjectivity of the whole thing comes into question. And that is why it is the closest thing to legalization, which is the standard around the world. In Canada, as mentioned by Chumal, in Colorado, 33 states of America, 50 states I understand they have legalized its medicinal purpose, for purposes of medicine. And recreation, I think, is another 20 states. There was a special edition of the Times magazine international edition that spoke on this issue. Marijuana goes Main Street. And a number of very, very brilliant minds talked about it. And that it will become a booming business, and the legalization march will continue for almost the whole world. There are other countries that have started legalization. And as best as possible, to work out a scenario to take away the oppressiveness that especially happens with poor little young people, and they're getting custodial penalties. You wanted to carry it to such a level that will prevent that from happening, preclude that from happening. And when you did, if Mr. Ben were to do it, honorable member, he is, a study as to what are the amounts generally that are in jail right now. I think there may be in the vicinity of about 100 of them, a number of males and females. The amount that you will want to prevent a jail term for will go into the hundreds of grams. And it is important then to understand that what it is the purpose here behind this whole thing. And that is not being seemingly understood. Yes, you know, when we listen to the realities out there, I was a defense counsel, former minister of public security, and I know that the rich people in this country get away with the 500 grams, but the poor man go to jail. You have to believe that. And they're gone and go to jail as a result, 3 years and all of that, for purposes of having, you ask Mr. Ben, it's all there on record. But the whole point of it, Mr. Speaker, it is that the rich people will get the best lawyers. They will also get the contacts and the networks to meet some of the senior members of the police force. And they are outside. Whereas you have, and I want to mention this about indigenous people, Mr. Schumann, when they get hold up with the 8 gram and the 10 gram, from outside of those regions, they are brought to the coast and remanded. They can't even meet their family members. Yes. And they're locked away for days. Why? Because of the fact police will tell you that they don't have anybody to bail them. I say you bring out the people. What we did was I indicated to you that it was brought, and of course, certain priorities, you wanted to wait for the report, 2018, and then 2018 had its own problems. But it was brought here, and we have now seen reason to bring it back, and Sherrod has brought it again. And so, the next point I wish to make, Mr. Speaker, is this. This thing about criminality might be the basis for bringing this thing. No. And that a lot of domestic problems occur. Let me tell you something. When I don't know if the times have changed since I was a minister. But one of the things that create more domestic violence was liquor, alcohol. Oh God, that is the worst. You go to the estate areas, the PPP stronghold. That is the worst. Drinking the liquor, the white rum and the brown rum. Beating the wife, cutting out the wife's hands and all of that. Would you say that we should ban liquor? Well, that is the whole point of it. We want to work out a certain sets of solutions that will get us to a point where we can deal with these issues in a parliamentary way. Nobody gets custodial penalty for a number of things in relation to alcohol. You're going to the laws, you will see little children can't go to the rum shop to buy liquor for the daddy. But in some areas in Guyana, they'd use the children to go buy liquor. The parents are not doing it in any way. No law is enforced and all of that. And the whole thing about it is enforcement. When you do not have a capacity because of the nature of the culture, you have to then think about how do you get away or get around the thing. And if up to 15 grams possession and above that is trafficking, and the trafficker now got to go 3 to 5 years jail, let us do something about it. And that is what Sherrod is, Miss Honorable Member, is getting at. That is what he's getting at. And to avoid all the oppressiveness, to avoid all the oppression that comes with it. And that is basically the point that is absolutely beyond, it seems, the members who spoke over there. To say that no family will support it, I don't know where that statistic has been obtained from by Mr. Ben. But I know of a lot of families that don't support alcohol, Mr. Ben. You go and do a study and a survey, you are going to find that that is the statistic. But do we ban it? I don't know. But we must understand all these arguments that surround this point. And it is very important then, you will come to the realization that custodial penalties for small amounts is not the way to go. It is always going to be an extremely difficult thing as to what then is the amount that should mean custodial sentence as a consequence. Because we knew that we are not going to get the support of the government for legalization, it is important that we now put what is to be a number, a quantum, 500 grams, that will ensure those who deal with this thing, have possession of it, they're not going to go to jail. And so it is important. This, what we are doing, is the closest coming to the recommendations made by WHO and CARICOM. And I want people to understand it, because if you just get away with a disingenuous argument that there's criminality and that we are supporting criminals, no. And it is not as if when you carry it to this quantum that everybody, I am certain the family members of us all here are not going to deal with this thing. But that doesn't mean that everybody become a criminal and don't want to deal with marijuana. They are 90% of the country obviously against this thing. But it is what it is that is the purpose behind it. To ensure jail terms are avoided. We have had too many of our young people in jail for terms of 3 years and more sometimes for these small amounts. Some of them so poor they can't pay bail even when you get a small amount. The special circumstance, they can't get a lawyer to argue the case. They gone in there. And then police might sometimes tell them, by plead guilty now, you don't get caught with the thing, more jail. And the custodial penalty has another quantum behind it. When they go in the jail there, they graduate because of who they meet in there. They graduate to the extent of becoming, the word is recidivism, you know, and that is what we're trying to avoid. Mr. Speaker, it has its consequences. All of them over there understand too that there's a huge cost to this thing. To take care of a prisoner in Guyana, minimum is $248,000 a year. And that is just a basic, and that is why you don't want these guys to be an expenditure on the state for something that the entire world is now legalizing. So why not increase it so whatever the amount they're caught with, police can't go and lock them up because it ain't got jail term. And that is what we are doing here. I want the important points behind this to be understood. And not let us take cheap political points for saying X, Y, and Z and criminality. We deal with criminals and all of that. And also that it brings domestic violence and this and that. Domestic violence and all that happens as a result of what is very much legal, and that is brown rum and white rum. Yes. Mr. Speaker, I think a number of the other points have been well made by my other colleagues on this side. We have to study the statistics. We have to ensure that there is more robust evidence-based studies in Guyana be done about it. I could understand, because we put 500 grams there, a number of people going to say, oh, it is too much. Oh, you see what the APNU AFC coalition wants for the country? But that is the whole point of it, because of the fact we want to get as close to legalization. You go now to shops and stores in Canada, you can buy the thing. Investors out of Jamaica are planting marijuana to export to Canada. It's a big business, as Schumann indicated. So why, when we are trying as best as possible to work into it by virtue of a motion and an amendment to the Act, this rowing about, I don't see the sense about it. Mr. Speaker, I urge that this motion be supported and that we will have that support from those members now that they understand some of the arguments that I have made. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The Honourable Member and Attorney General, Anil Nandla.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, listening to the debate in this House and examining the bill that was brought, and then the motion, and listening to the debate, Mr. Speaker, we are declining in our standards in this House terribly. We owe the people of our country better. We are being paid here, and listen to the quality of the debate. Not a single study, everybody speaks about a study, and not a single study quoted from. Not a single statistic provided. When you listen, Mr. Speaker, let me begin. In 2015, for the purpose of the 2015 elections, when the two parties coalesced together, the AFC made it a platform promise through its chairman, then Nigel Hughes, made it a manifesto promise to legalize marijuana. That was a platform promise made during the 2015 campaign. They made another platform promise, constitutional reform. That was the two major platform promises. The PPP never promised in 2015 anything about legalizing marijuana. We never promised that. Not in 2015, So 2015, you won the elections and you occupied the government. And as the distinguished member of Agriculture, Education explained, in a series of articles reported in the newspaper, you did not deliver upon that promise. You did not deliver upon that promise. Mr. Ramjatan wants us to praise Mr. Carrington because rightfully the honorable member tried, but he was a lone ranger. He brought a bill and placed it before the House. And with all of that, Ramjatan, just the honorable member just said, he never took a step as leader of that party to prosecute that bill in the House. He never did that. And what did the governing APNU say about the bill? That they will not put it through the House. They will not put it on the agenda. They will not enact it. And that is your record. And before you want to be taken seriously with your motion, you have to stand in this House and tell the Guyanese people that you promised them and you failed to deliver on that promise. That's the first thing that you have to do. And now that you are in the opposition, you now want to piggyback on the PPP and you want us to pass the bill for you. Well, we are not going to do that for you. We promised the people of this country during our campaign that we will reform the marijuana law, that we will remove from the law custodial sentences on small amount. The PPP promised that, and the PPP will deliver that to the people of this country. So don't come and tell us here about how bad the situation is and how great is the bill. You did not pass it. And the people put you on that side because of that. So that's the first thing that we have to establish. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, they have a motion, they are in opposition. The executive government's, one of their principal functions, one of their constitutional duties is to pass legislation. But in a democratic scenario, the law also allows opposition the facility to pass legislation while they are in opposition. But the law says, Mr. Speaker, and the parliamentary practice says, that you have to make a case. It is a power that is highly circumscribed. And that is why there is a motion. It is not automaticity. You have to present a motion. And you have to convince us and the people by that motion why you should be permitted to exercise a power that the people didn't give you in the first place at the election. That is to pass law. When you stood up, you did not even know how to read the motion. You did not even know how to read the motion. The speaker had to tell you that you had to say something else. So ill-prepared you were. So ill-prepared you were. Mr. Speaker, the position is so strict in England. The position is so strict in England, Mr. Speaker, that the Chancery Division of the High Court exercised a special jurisdiction to grant an injunction if a speaker errs and allows a private member bill to proceed. So strict is the procedure. The content of the bill has to be examined, Mr. Speaker. And I went into Orskay Maze. Mr. Speaker, and it has what should be the subject of private members' bill and what should not be. For example, Mr. Speaker, there was once a bill to sell intoxicating liquor on Sundays in certain communities in London. And that was allowed by the Speaker to be a private member bill. And upon second reading, while the debate was going on, the court granted an injunction to stop the debate on the ground that selling liquor on Sunday is such a public thing that it cannot be the subject of a private member motion. Marijuana, legalizing marijuana is such an important national thing that it should never be the subject of a private person's motion. So this thing is inherently wrong. Inherently wrong, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other important point that I want to make is that, and this is what Orskine May says, private bills have frequently been objected to on the ground that they should have been brought in as public bills. Most of these objections are sustained and the bills are withdrawn or not proceeded with, simply because of the subject of the bill. The other point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is that what is the position when there's a government bill? Once there's a government bill, Mr. Speaker, as there is in this case, and that subject matter is determined to be of a public nature, once the government tables a bill, the next step is for that entire private bill to be withdrawn and for the government bill to take precedence. And that is exactly the position. Even if you follow their own debate, they have said repeatedly to us how important this is to Guyana, to all the people of Guyana, to all families. That can never be an issue to be the subject of a private member bill. And Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, we have a bill which will be read later on the agenda. And that by itself, in principle, defeats the motion that is being moved by my friend. But quite apart from that, Mr. Speaker, let's now go to the bill that they are proposing. Because we don't want on this side for anyone to feel that we are using our majority and our numerical strength to vote down motions or bills or any policy. We are going to show reason why. And that is what every member on this side has been doing from the beginning of the debate. And that is why I am saying that on the other side, you're not hearing argument of a corresponding caliber and quality to continue and sustain an educational and edifying debate. It's a one-way street, but we'll continue. Mr. Speaker, what the bill does that my friend is promulgating, and firstly, Mr. Speaker, the other thing is, and the Honorable Minister of Education spoke about it, and rightfully so, because plagiarism is an academic wrong. It's an academic wrong which we should not perpetuate nor perpetrate in this House. And the Honorable Member comes here and word for word, Carrington spelled one of the words wrong, he spelled it wrong. The only exception was the quantum. Only exception. Carrington made 10 mistakes, he made 10 mistakes. If we want to be taken seriously, we have to improve seriously, joke, heckling aside. You have your dignity to preserve and protect. Mr. Speaker, Clause 2 of the bill proposes to amend Section 4(1)(a)(1) by deleting the term of imprisonment as a penalty for possession of any narcotic or any narcotic substance represented or held out to be a narcotic. As it stands, Section 4(1)(a), which deals with summary conviction, carry a penalty of a fine of not less than 30,000, together with imprisonment for not less than 3 years nor more than 5 years. On the other hand, Section 4(1)(a)(2), which deals with conviction and indictment, carries a penalty of not less than 30,000 or 3 times the market value of the narcotic, whichever is greater, together with the imprisonment for not less than 5 years nor more than 10 years. So what they're doing is the bill proposes to take out the imprisonment part. That's all. So some of the honorable members on that side who have spoken on this debate do not understand even the bill that they are proposing, because they speak about decriminalization of possession of marijuana. That is not what your bill is doing. Your bill is simply removing custodial sentence from the offense up to a certain amount. So they don't even understand. And listen to him. He's telling me to talk about my own bill. And he bring a bill that he's asking me to debate. This is the level of mediocrity, Mr. Speaker, that you should not tolerate in this House. So he doesn't understand the difference between removal of custodial sentence and decriminalization. Decriminalization for your education means it's no longer a criminal offense. Here the fine remains. What your bill does is simply take away the imprisonment. But the difficulty with Clause 2, Mr. Speaker, in the honorable member proposal, is that the opposition misses its own objective, its policy objective, by failing to realize that narcotic in the act, because what they did, they simply cut out the sentence part. So but what they're doing there is doing that in relation to all narcotic. Narcotic in the act includes 100 and something substances, which includes cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, a whole set of things. So what they're doing is not cannabis and marijuana alone. They are removing custodial sentence from their bill from cocaine, heroin, and every other narcotic. How can you bring such preposterous work to the highest house in this country? How can you do that? That's the level of quality of representation that you offer the people of this country. You have not read what you brought. So, Mr. Speaker, that's the first major blunder, that this thing has to be rejected out of hand. It legalizes, it takes off custodial sentence from every narcotic under the act. Every narcotic. And up to 500 grams. So all the cocaine that they were talking about shipping, they now are going to legalize it. They are now going to attach a fine, and the fine is some $10,000. That's what they're doing. Look. The comrade in the back can't believe that you did that. He's saying, who believes in that? He's saying, who believes? You can't believe he did that. Read it, my friend. Read it, my brother. Read it. You are young. You are young. You have a future. Read it. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the first thing I would like to. The failure to recognize that narcotics mean more than ganja, marijuana, and cannabis in the act. Also, the opposition failed to address Section 4(2), which deals with possession of any narcotic or a substance held out to be a narcotic at specified places. So they never touched that. So these places include any premises, any education institution, public place, and public place has a wide meaning. It means any road, any highway, any place, and a whole set of things. So you, it's they have not addressed that section at all. So you can be on the highway, you get off on the one section, and then on the other section, because of the place where you are at, you can be convicted. That is so exactly what Mr. Carrington did. That is that they copy. Never read the act as a whole, just amend one section and leave all the consequential mistakes or amendments that are supposed to be implemented to make the amendment comprehensive and fluid. They omit to do all of that. And then, Mr. Speaker, Clause 3 of the bill seeks to amend Section 5.2 of the Act to increase the quantity of cannabis or cannabis resin a person may have in their possession to be liable for the offense of trafficking from 15 to 500 grams. However, and Mr. Speaker, what they have done here is turn the Act, the entire scheme of the Act upside down. Because possession is a different offense and trafficking is a different offense. It carries different policy consideration. It carries different principles. It carries different penalties. It even carries different modes of trial. So they have turned the whole thing upside down by basically treating possession and trafficking as the same. In fact, one can argue that they have abolished the offense of trafficking. Because if you make possession up to 500 grams mere offense without custodial sentence, then the offense of trafficking almost gone. You have to start from 200 going up. And Mr. Ramchadan was saying, so what? So what? If the man is found with 30.5 grams, you going to give him the jail? Well, if it's 200.5, the same jail too. It's same jail. So, Mr. Speaker, were you to insert the amendment in the current form into the Principal Act, the Act would have become inoperable. And Defense Counsel would have a field day because the whole scheme of the legislation gone whack, out of sync. And then, Mr. Speaker, there's other problems with the bill. Clause 4, as I said, proposed by deleting the word cannabis from the provision. That's all that it does, right? But then you have other offenses like smoking, inhaling, sniffing, or otherwise using cannabis. You have a whole set of related offenses that they have not amended either. So it can be lawful to you have the cannabis, according to them. It can be lawful to have it, but you can't smoke it. You can't inhale it. You can't light it because they didn't amend the other section. It's still an offense to smoke. Yes. It's still an offense. So, Mr. Speaker, then, so you have a whole set of offenses that are not can be enforced. And then, Mr. Speaker, the Act over the years have been amended. And there are provisions that allow a court to take into account if a person, for example, pleads personal use. And that over the years, the law has been ameliorated by different small amendments, etc. And those are in the law. But those have not been touched. Those have not been touched, and if you amend the major ones, you have to continue right through because it's a running act. It's a huge act, Mr. Speaker. This is the size of the Principal Act. How can you amend this huge act by 2 sentences? How? How? Let's see, start carrying on. He did not read anything. He did not read his bill. He did not read the motion. He did not read our bill. And I know he didn't read it because I know that he's more intelligent than what he told us here today. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a disaster. This is a disaster that the easier we wrap it up and take it to Siobhan, wrap it up neatly, let the Parliament staff take all the papers, wrap it up neatly, take it to Siobhan's, and go by Hagbosh, and you dump it there. That's where this belongs. And we have a bill, Mr. Speaker. We have a bill that we don't profess it to be perfect. Let me begin by saying so. We promise consultation, and our bill is going to be subject of consultation through a process in the Assembly. But we have put out something here. As once it's going to be subject to consultation, it's not our final position. But it's a bill that we are putting here. And Mr. Speaker, in this bill, we have tried as far as possible to follow the position in the Caribbean. Repeated references have been made to the Caribbean study, and I thought that one would have read out excerpts of the report to guide us. And Mr. Speaker, so CARICOM at the level of the Attorneys General, the committee is called the LAC, the Legal Affairs Committee of CARICOM, resolved that as far as possible, legislation that are common, that are going to be considered to be common in the Caribbean, should go through that kind of process. And as Minister Manichan said, each country has a facility to deal with the idiosyncrasies of their own jurisdiction, should it be different. And the approach adopted at CARICOM was the same. And Mr. Speaker, as a result of that report, countries have begun to implement. Barbados, the position is no more than 14 grams of cannabis or cannabis resin, and you have mandatory counseling. That's the penalty. 14 grams. It's an offense, but the offense carries mandatory counseling. St. Vincent, 56 grams or less cannabis or cannabis resin, it's a ticket offense. Belize, 10 grams or less of cannabis or cannabis resin, ticket offense. St. Christopher Nevis, 56 grams or cannabis resin and 56 grams of cannabis or 15 grams of cannabis resin, that is permissible. St. Vincent. Mr. Ralph Gonzalez specifically departed as a campaign promise, and that is what he implemented. Trinidad and Tobago, similar. Dominica, 28 grams or less of cannabis or cannabis resin, that is also not an offense. Antigua and Barbuda, 15 grams or less, offense, but 16 to more than 5 pounds is possession and imprisonment. Jamaica, 56 grams or less is a ticketed offense. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the theme of the Caribbean. And that side is proposing 200 grams. 500 grams, my apologies. Completely out of sync. Even Mr. Carrington was more conservative. Where they got their 500 grams from? And Mr. Speaker, they spoke about consultations. I mean, we have no, do we have no, we have no care about what we say in this house? We just say anything that comes to our mind. This is a small country. We know politics in this country. If they consulted with one organization, it would have been on In the Ring, the breakfast show, the afternoon show, the Lampy Pampy show. Not a single consultation was done. Yet he's here, the honorable member, telling us that they consulted. That is the, Mr. Speaker, the contempt that they have for our people. No, nobody they consulted with, and they're standing here and telling the people that we consulted with you. We consulted with you, and you tell us bring 500 grams. What kind of deception is that? Mr. Speaker, we have in our bill, Mr. Speaker, have followed the CARICOM guidelines, and we have articulated and formulated a position which is in keeping with our manifesto, and we still say that it is not our final position, that the people of Guyana and those constituencies that may be peculiarly more affected by this issue, we are going to offer them, as well as everyone else, an opportunity to participate. And out of that process will come the most consensual possible bill, because you have competing interests. I have spoken to the Pandits, I have spoken to the Maulanas, I have spoken to the priests, I have spoken to the Rastafarian too. So they have competing interests. So we can't go, Mr. Ramjit, and say, well, 10% of the people will only be affected. We can't be as irresponsible as him and pass a law for 10% of the population. We are the government, and I believe that that is why they put this 500 grams. Reckless politics. What they want to do is to put us on the back foot. That they have gone ultra liberal. But that's not liberal, that's insanity. 500 grams is insanity. So, Mr. Speaker, out of necessity, we have to reject the motion that is before this House. And, Mr. Speaker, at the appropriate time, we'll table our bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Attorney General. The Honorable Member, Mr. Sherrod Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one would be persuaded, perhaps by the Attorney General's legal arguments, if he didn't just lose a case before the High Court to Attorney at Law Darren Wade, in which he presented similar strong legal arguments. Similar strong legal arguments. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the PPPC continues to steal Abdu AFC projects and initiatives. And this is one such initiative. Just last week, they were presenting the road link from Diamond to Ogle as theirs. Just last week, they were presenting the maternity waiting home at Region 2 as their COVID rehabilitation center. And similarly, Mr. Speaker, they are stealing this initiative by the Abdu AFC to reduce the custodial sentence and free up the weed, because that is who they are. They steal projects and ideas consistently. Mr. Speaker, we sat down here and we listened to the Honorable Member, Mr. Ben, attempt to lampoon young people on this side of the House, because they have led by example, of course, with young people on their side. There's a member in this House on the other side who is a convict before the courts. a youngster on the PPP side who was convicted of assault, Mr. Speaker, and that is the other side's offering of young people. Right? The young person, there's a young person presented by the PPP on the other side in this house who lied to this house that they were not a dual citizen when they took the oath of a parliamentarian. And
Honorable member, I've had to refer to the unparliamentary words in the past, and I think you have good retention that lied is one of them.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member told the House untruth as a young person being offered up by the other side. And you know that matter had to be litigated before the courts, and the Chief Justice sided with this side of the House that the member was being untruthful when the member took the oath as a parliamentarian. So you cannot lecture us on the quality of the young persons on this side. You cannot lecture us. You have no right to lecture us, as a matter of fact. And the Honourable Member Robeson Ben, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Robeson Ben spoke about the criminality that we were engaging in. When the Honourable Minister Robeson Ben should know acutely that is one ethnicity that keeps being captured by the criminality of marijuana. He should understand that acutely. And our young people as well. So when he comes and he lectures us about the quality of young people we have on our side, he has no right to lecture us. The Honourable Minister Priya Manichan spoke this morning, and I can tell the Honourable Member did not read the CARICOM Regional Commission's report on marijuana, the similar way she did not read the worksheets for our students that were riddled with mistakes and continue to be riddled with mistakes. She did not read. And I can tell the Honourable Attorney General did not read the report that is groundbreaking in the research that has been put into it and should form the basis of any legislation. He could not even utter the name of the report, the learned Attorney General, because he did not read it. And that is why he hit between all kinds of legal gymnastics that couldn't even convince the Chief Justice in the Haitian case against Darren Wade. He could not even convince the Chief Justice when he sought to bring rigging allegations against Mr. Mingo. He had no evidence, and the case fell apart, and he withdrew it. He couldn't convince the law, but he wants to come and convince us with all kinds of legal gymnastics. He did not read the report. Again, this is the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana that has presented a seminal report to this region. And the AG is being untruthful, Mr. Speaker, when he suggested that it's CARICOM who legislated different amounts of marijuana usage in different territories. Nothing in the report says that. Nothing in the report says that. But what has happened here is that the fraudulent government, the government, wants to be able to use CARICOM conveniently and CARICOM's reports. But when it does not suit their purpose, they don't want to touch the CARICOM Regional Commission report on marijuana. The Honourable Charles Ramson sidestepped the report. I think he went to Australia. He went to Australia, the same place they didn't want to go for exports recently. But he went to Australia for an export on marijuana because he didn't read the report. He didn't read it. Charles comes here, the Honourable Member, to ask where we have done our consultations.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I didn't say it's us.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable member, go ahead, Mr. Duncan.
thank you very much. Wherever the honorable member's research did not come from the Caribbean, and we maintain that the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana's report has to be the gold standard for anything that deals with marijuana in the region. So the honorable member wants to come and lecture us about who we consulted with, so they can go now and consult with the same people. They accuse of us not consulting with anyone and bringing a bill, but they have done the same thing. They have brought a bill and now saying they're going to put a committee in place to go and consult. So even if you don't trust who we have consulted, trust the CARICOM Regional Commission. Trust the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana, because, Mr. Speaker, on the 6th of November 2017, the same time we were bringing the first iteration of this bill, the CARICOM was doing consultations in Guyana. They consulted with civil society, focus groups, youth focus groups. They even had town hall meetings in Guyana. So if you don't trust our consultation and our research, the base has to be the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana. Again, they consulted in Guyana, civil society, focus groups, youth focus groups, and they held town hall meetings. So clearly, I say again, the learned AG did not read this, or else he'd never make the arguments he proffered in this honorable house today. Mr. Speaker, if the other side had took the time to read the research and the report by CARICOM, they would have known that part of our work in presenting this bill had to do with the 2015 Commission of Inquiry on Prisons. They would have known that. And from that inquiry in 2015, the Commission of Inquiry on Prisons, something important was learned. But clearly, Priya didn't read that. The honorable member, Robeson Ben, the Minister of Home Affairs, did not read the 2015 Commission on the Inquiry of Prisons, or else he would have known, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, that no one should be jailed. This was the recommendation of the Commission for the possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use, that Guyanese authorities should avoid remanding what it called low-level, non-violent drug offenders, and instead look at non-custodial sentences, such as community service, treatment, and educational opportunities. The Honorable Minister Robeson then did not read it, or else he would never proffer. He would have never made the statements he made this morning in the Honorable House.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister, standing order.
I just want to say I have the report and I read it.
The honorable member would have to give way to you, sir. Honorable member, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minister did not read as well, did not read the comparative analysis on student drug use in Caribbean countries, Antigua, Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, had done any research on this topic, that impacted on the bill, they would have known, for instance, again, that it was the CARICOM consultation locally which impacted the CARICOM Regional Commission's work on marijuana, which says to us, Mr. Speaker, it was the Honorable Attorney General who wanted statistics and studies. So let me give him some statistics. According to the CARICOM report, Guyana has experienced a significant increase, 53% of arrests that were marijuana related. The percentage of those arrests due to possession went from 52.6% when in 2013 to 27% in 2015. You asked for stats. 52.6% in 2013, arrests for small amounts. And these are the people who want to come here and lecture us that they care now. When in 23 years as a government, they never sought to reduce the custodial sentences. And that is why in 2015, that is why in 2013, the arrest for small amounts of marijuana was 52%. But a government that cared in 2015 reduced that to 26%. Mr. Speaker, if the Honorable Robeson Ben and the Honorable Priya Manichan had done any research and reading, if the Honorable Attorney General had done any significant preparation for the debate, they would have understood that a Cadre's poll commissioned by the government in 2017 stated that 17% of the persons, for instance, in the Bahamas, said they use marijuana monthly. In 2016, Guyana, the percentage of persons who used marijuana of that year was 9.8%. It's consistent with the number quoted by my honorable colleague, Kemraj Ramtitani, in terms of marijuana usage in Guyana. And that is the Cadre's poll that was done. Mr. Speaker, again, the Guyana experience from the research work that has been done, the research that the other side is now going to commission. They don't like studies. They don't like studies. They come down hard when you commission studies and so on. Because in this House, Mr. Speaker, I said in this House standing in my place that it was the Honorable Minister of Agriculture who promised studies before the sugar industries were opened. We are still waiting on the studies. Studies were done for the building of the new Demawara Harbor Bridge, but they're against the studies. If they had done any work, they would have seen that according again, Mr. Speaker, don't take our consultations, take what was done by the CARICOM Regional Commission on marijuana in Guyana. It is those studies that informs us that data available estimate 5 potential benefits, including costs averted from marijuana-related possession arrests, costs averted from incarcerations, estimates of excise revenue from marijuana sales and activities licensing are tremendous if the barriers to possession and usage are lifted. But they asked for stats, so let me give them some. Overall, Model 1 was estimated to produce the lowest benefit in Guyana at $545 million savings. If you reduce the custodial sentences and you free up the weed. Members of the government, I commend this report to you guys. Because if you had read it, you would never have come so unprepared to the House. You asked for stats and for numbers. Model 2, at the highest end in terms of saving for Guyana, suggests that $1.73 billion would be saved if you just free up a little of the weed. The highest projection on the Model 3 was $5.8 billion, using assumptions, again, for the model. in the conclusion of the CARICOM report, because they don't trust our consultations, they don't trust our meeting the people and asking them what they want to see in such a bill. In the conclusion to the report of CARICOM, the Commission is of the view that a too limited approach to law reform, including one that focuses only on medical marijuana, would be counterproductive and inimical to the goals of Caribbean development as outlined in the SDGs and endorsed by CARICOM. The report suggests a balanced approach would meet the main social justice, public health rights, and citizen security objectives of the region, and would be presented in a hybrid or a mixed options kind of offering. The report suggests that this would be incremental and a cautious approach to removing prohibition, but not too little that the goals would be frustrated, and not too much that CARICOM states are unable to manage the important regulatory controls that are envisaged. So the learned Attorney General could engage in all the legal gymnastics he wants. He cannot defeat the work that has been put in by the specialists in the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana. He cannot defeat that. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, in closing, although about the same proportion, this was attributed to Bernie Sanders in the American experience, who says that although about the same proportion of blacks to whites use marijuana, a black person is almost 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than a white person. And we only have to translate that to our experience. We can see the hundreds of young people who are incarcerated for marijuana use. Where are the people who shipped out the tons of cocaine to Belgium? Where are they? Again, one is left to ask, Mr. Speaker, how come the PPP didn't bring this bill as private members' bill during the last 5 years, or in the 23 years they spent in government, if they care so much? Mr. Speaker, there's an element to this bill, or an element to this debate, that has to focus on the issue of poverty. But the AG won't understand poverty, the Honorable AG, because he said that he's a chatri. Mr. Speaker, poor people who have no lawyers, as the Honorable Kemraj Ramjitan said, can't afford one, and one is not provided, are subject to harsh penalties. But we understand that in a PPPC government, who got money, got bargain. Poor people don't have recourse, and we can take a similar case. 3 fellas were recently accused of murdering the Henry boys, went to court unrepresented, being swallowing that pill, PPP. The Honorable Charles Ramson, again, in his presentation, said that when you have 31 seats in Parliament, you no longer make the call. These are the same people who wanted to lecture us about national unity. And I'm surprised, coming from a youth like Mr. Ramson, I am quite surprised by that. Mr. Ramson, the honorable member, remind us that the PPP will not support this bill or any bill that comes from the opposition, even when it has benefits for Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, I implore the members of the PPP to rethink their position. Read the CARICOM report on marijuana use and support this bill, for it is the least that they can do to right the wrongs that has happened for 23 plus years under the PPPC administration as regards persons who are found with small amounts of marijuana. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, this is a good time to put the question. I now put the motion that leave be granted for the introduction and first reading of the Narcotics, Drugs, and Psychotropic Substances Control Amendment Bill 2020, number 16 of 2020. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Sorry, the noes have it.
No, division.
Sorry, the noes have it. I want to add that the Honorable Prime Minister earlier today rejoined the meeting virtually. Initially, he was chairing a meeting and didn't start with us in the session. The noes have it.
Have it.
Honorable members, earlier today on the aspect of the order paper, we had missed one item, introduction of bills. I was informed that there was a supplementary order paper, and I failed to take note of it. I now would like to call on the Honorable Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to present to the Assembly the Fiscal Management and Accountability Amendment Bill 2021, Bill number 1, 2021, a bill intituled an Act to amend the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, and I move that the bill be read the first time.
Let the bill be read a first time.
Fiscal Management and Accountability Amendment Act, Bill 2021, Bill number 1 of 2021.
Honorable Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask that the Narcotics, Drugs, and Psychotropic Substances Control Amendment Bill 2020, Bill number 2 of 2021, be read for the first time.
Let the bill be read the first time.
Narcotic, Drugs, and Psychotropic Substances Control Amendment Bill 2021, Bill number 2 of 2021.
We can now return.
Mr. Speaker, if I may,
Yes,
there's another
Honorable.
application I wish to make at this point in time. I am respectfully asking, Mr. Speaker, that this bill be transmitted to a special select committee for consideration.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The bill will go to a special select committee to be established. The Honorable Member, Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmund, will now move the following motion. Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmund, you may proceed. Honorable member, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're happy to hear that you are in better health. I must say that your virtual presence does not have the impact of your physical presence. Also, I wish to extend to all members of the House a bliss and prosperous 2021. Also, if you will permit me, Your Honor, I wish to extend belated birthday greetings to my colleague on the other side of the House, Honorable Charles Ramson. I've known Mr. Ramson since the days I've been on the bench, and he has always been very passionate, and sometimes I felt he was very animated, and he has still continued in this manner. I extend these greetings on behalf of myself, my two lovely children, Simran Arya Edmond, Sanjana Ananya Edmond, and my husband, Joel Persid Edmond. We wish you all the very best. Miss Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the motion standing in my name, the motion to appoint a commission of inquiry to investigate the unrest at the Lusignan prison, the subsequent deaths of several prisoners and their injuries on the 19th of September 2020. I do not expect that this will be a contentious or controversial motion. I do not believe that there is anyone on either side of this honorable House who believes that we should not investigate and inquire into the circumstances surrounding the incidents that led to the unrest and the subsequent loss of lives at the Lusignan prison. So, Your Honor, I do not expect any controversy on that. In a number of ways, because the question of why it happened and how touches on human rights. Permit me, Your Honor, to express my heartfelt gratitude to you for allowing this motion to be tabled and debated. Also, Your Honor, please permit me to express my sincerest commiserations on behalf of this side of the House to the families of Mr. Earl Graham and Mr. Winston Herbert. We are honored to have some of the family members of the deceased here with us who are suffering from untold grief and trauma because of the loss of their loved ones. These family members are in the pursuit of justice and truth. Justice and truth to which they are entitled, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Earl Graham lost his beloved mother a mere matter of days before his untimely demise and was due to be released in a very short time, in a matter of days after that fateful day, to join with his grieving siblings to mourn their loss and to celebrate with them the life and the memories of their mother. The family, Mr. Speaker, needs answer. They strongly feel that there is a cover-up in the death of their brother. Photographic and video evidence dispute what is recorded on the report that he was shot in the chest. Your Honor, it is not my intention, and it will never be my intention because of my legal background to violate the rules of this honorable house or further cause pain and agony to the families by displaying photographs or videos about the subject at hand. But I'd wish to go on record by stating that some of these images and videos have been shared with me by the families and other concerned Guyanese. These very images, the photographs of that day's event, went viral, and everyone's heart, and not just the family member, felt pain, anguish, and grief. This motion, Your Honor, is a motion of humanity. It is a motion about the society we want to live in. It is a motion about a family who are demanding justice. It is about finding out what exactly happened on that fateful day. It is about the truth. It is about justice. It is about the future of our country and the good governance. Just for a moment, put yourselves in that situation of the families as citizens, as mothers, as fathers, as brothers and sisters. How could we as humans not feel? How could we as humans not care? This motion isn't an irrational one or a perverse one. Every resolve and whereas clause is a clause that is of national importance. We regret, and I'm sure all of us regret, what has happened on September 19 at the Lusignan prison, and we wish the events would have unfolded differently. We cannot restore the lives of these men, but, Your Honor, we can do great service by pursuing the facts and use them to guide the necessary course of action. I'm sure our concerns for a clear and unambiguous understanding of the issue will ensure full support of this motion. Your Honor, it is my view that before we proceed on deliberations on this matter, it is necessary to address the elephant in this room. There is usually a disappointing and regrettable knee-jerk reaction whenever justice is being sought for those who have been incarcerated. Popular opinion tends to pour scorn on these attempts and automatically assign blame on the side of those who are imprisoned. Despite these ill-considered postures, legislators must never evade, dodge, or avoid their responsibilities in these affairs. Your Honor, the sanctity of life must and has to be respected. Life must be treated with the eminence it deserves in whatever situation it presents itself. Your Honor, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, known as Mahatma Gandhi, put it this way, and I quote, "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members." So, Your Honor, the law does not end at the prison gate, nor is it not applicable within the walls of a prison. The sanctity of life, Your Honor, does not end at the prison gate. And importantly, sir, no one is above the law. If those who are entrusted with authority flout the law, there must be consequences. Equally, sir, if prisoners violate the law and pose great threat to public security while serving their time, the prescribed penal rules and procedures must be applied. I believe and strongly do believe that all support the view that individuals deprived of their liberty and incarceration must not be denied their fundamental rights at any time. Our Constitution, which is sacred, Article 138(1) states as follows: no person shall be deprived of their life intentionally, save in the execution of the sentence of a court, in respect of an offense under the laws of Guyana, of which he has been convicted. Having said that, Your Honor, all and sundry must disabuse themselves of the notion which suggests that prisoners are not entitled to any rights. Mr. Earl Graham and Mr. Winston, they were paying their debts to society. And if the facts reveal that they were murdered, the law must follow its course. If the prison officials were doing their jobs and they followed all procedures and they broke no laws or any standing operating procedures, then their professionalism should remain intact and should, rightfully so, be given the opportunity to clear their names and maintain their credibility. The hard-working men and women of the prison service deserve our respect and support. Your Honor, we respect the difficult work being executed by our professional men and women in the prison service. We are eternally grateful for the protection they constantly provide to this nation in extremely difficult circumstances. However, sir, in the absence of independent observations, we cannot ascertain what the truth is, and which of the aforementioned conclusions are correct. Hence, this motion is wholly necessary. The United Nations Manual on Human Rights and Prisons at page 3 states, human rights is a modern term, but the principle that it invokes is as old as humanity. It is that certain rights and freedoms are fundamental to human existence. There are inherent entitlements that come to every person as a consequence of being human and are founded on respect for the dignity and worth of each person. They are not entitled, they are not privileges nor gifts given at the whims of a ruler of a government, nor can they be taken away arbitrarily. They cannot be denied, nor can they be forfeited because an individual has committed an offense or broken the law. End of quote. So, Your Honor, for those who wish to suggest for political or any other purposes that the coalition is supporting quote-unquote thief man culture has had little regard for the hard-working men and women of the prison services, or may want to suggest that we are supportive of the authorities in their efforts to preserve public security. I urge you, and I urge all honorable members, to desist from such crass and short-sighted views. The coalition is in pursuit of truth and is hopeful that truth could guide the way forward. We are demonstrating our understanding of the concepts and the balances between justice and public security. Your Honor, guns are not the guarantors of good public order. It is justice. An investigation is critical in order to ascertain and clearly identify what took place, to identify those responsible, and to take steps to ensure that there is no repeat and that an event such as this never happens again. Mr. Speaker, according to an official statement by the Guyana Prison Service dated September 19, and I quote, after a visit by the Minister of Home Affairs and the Minister of Health on Saturday afternoon of September 19, some prisoners became hostile due to concerns about COVID-19, and prison officers sought to bring the situation under control. Several prisoners attempted to escape, and officers shot at about 7 inmates. This course of action resulted in the deaths of Mr. Earl Graham and Mr. Winston Herbert. Thus far, Your Honor, there has been no independent report to corroborate, question, or negate this account, which was issued by an interested party in this matter. We have reports via social media and other sources which have pointed to a different version of events. Any society that seeks to function on the basis of stability and order cannot allow myths, fables, and legends to fester and eat away at the fabric of society. Also, Your Honor, citizens will not have confidence in systems of authority if facts are not ascertained as a basis for actions and remedies. Your Honor, as a consequence, we are here. This motion seeks to put all theories and accounts to bed. In so doing, we expect deliverance of justice to the families, answers to the nation, the identification of lapses and breaches for correction, the consideration of policy-making remedies, and above all, the critical need to identify culpability if the facts so determine. We see this delay in initiating a structured commission of inquiry as a result of this government's, as some put it, a lackadaisical attitude, its history of inaction, and indeed a lack of capacity to act. There is also a history of a lack of accountability, which has been consistently demonstrated by this government. And I must say, Your Honor, that in the absence of information, the government is depriving the country and its citizens of solutions to fix the problem. We cannot, Your Honor, go about in a harem-scarer manner. That is why the Commission of Inquiry is so needed. If it pleases you, sir, I wish to place on record that this motion does not seek to satisfy any political pursuit or quench any political thirst. And I say this from the depth of my heart. It was And I say that from the depth of my heart, and I can live with my conscience or quench with any political thirst. It was tabled with the best of intentions and the interest of making this country better on the subject under examination, and by extension, respecting the sanctity of life, respecting human rights, and providing justice to the families. So, Your Honor, it is against this backdrop that commissions of inquiry become extremely important. A commission of inquiry is one of the many bodies available to a government with honorable intentions to inquire into various issues of national importance and interest. Commissions gather facts, report findings, and make recommendations. In consideration of what I have said before, it is difficult to envision why anybody would oppose this motion. The path to the truth runs through a commission of inquiry into this sordid development. To adequately illustrate this contention, it is necessary to highlight what the APNU AFC coalition did when we encountered a similar circumstance. In doing so, I hope there is efficient demonstration and education for my colleagues on that side of the House on how you conduct the business of the state. On March 2nd, 2016, almost 1 year after the coalition government legally assumed office, the Camp Street prison experienced disturbances with fatalities. Subsequently to this development, the head of state, President David Granger, commissioned an inquiry into these fatal disturbances. The commission was tasked with investigating the following: the causes, circumstances, and conditions that led to the disturbance on the morning of the 3rd of March 2016 that resulted in the death of 18 prisoners and any other subsequent disturbances at the Camp Street Prison, Georgetown. Additionally, the COI was tasked with to inquire into the nature of all injuries sustained by the prisoners during the disturbances of the morning of the 3rd of March 2016 and any other subsequent disturbances. Determine whether the conduct of the staff of the Guyana Prison Service who were on duty on the morning of the 3rd of March 2016 and thereafter was in conformity with the standard operating procedures of the Guyana Prison Service. Determine whether the deaths of the 18 prisoners was as a result of the negligence, abandonment of duty, disregard of instructions, inactions of the prison officers who were on duty of the night of the 2nd of March and the morning of the 3rd of March 2016. Your Honor, on March the 7th, 2016, instruments were received appointing the commissioners of the Commission of Inquiry into the disturbances and resultant deaths of 17 prisoners at the Camp Street Prisons, Georgetown, on March 3rd, 2016. Your Honor, the Commission's final report serves as a model for the situation we currently face I urge the right honorable members of that side of the House not only read it, but to deliberate upon it and make it available to every member of their cabinet. In the absence of this evidence-based approach to policy and decision making, all we have before us, Your Honor, is the account of one side of the story. Even so, if we examine those details, the need for a commission of inquiry becomes more pronounced. According to the official release, two sitting members of cabinet made their way into the facility to perform an extremely sensitive and technical task that must not be attempted by untrained political directors. In so doing, they have placed the country in grave danger. The statement of the incident clearly indicates that during the ill-advised and ill ad hoc negotiation between the ministers and the prisoners, all hell broke loose. So, Your Honor, on the face of it, it is reasonable to conclude that the minister's presence and their intervention may have been directly responsible in some form or fashion for the chaos that ensued and the subsequent loss of lives. Your Honor, negotiation in correctional institution is an academic field with specialized areas. When these two honorable gentlemen, when I say honorable gentlemen, I am not being sarcastic. I think they are very honorable gentlemen. I think Dr. Frank Anthony has the nation interest at heart. And I also feel that Minister Robeson Ben has the nation interest at heart. So when I made these comments, sir, I'm speaking on my own behalf. So when these two honorable gentlemen directly inserted themselves in what was clearly a crisis negotiation, they placed the professional men and women, the prisoner, and the wider society at great risk. As a consequence, Your Honor, we don't need to wait on a commission of inquiry to apply the doctrine of ministerial responsibility. The honorable member of this House, who has direct responsibility of prison, has demonstrated over the last 3 months that he is on a mission to break the records for the worst ministerial outing in the archives of Guyana's governance history. If just after 3 months of being installed, he can produce this much catastrophe, one will wonder what will happen in a matter of months, of years. So, Your Honor, the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs has presided over crisis after crisis since he was installed in the chair under his watch, and the following has occurred. The largest drug bust in the nation history. And that word's repeated. The largest drug bust in the nation's history. The disbanding of the anti-narcotics infrastructure. We have seen prison riots, the deprofessionalization of the security services, Your Honor, the nation is at its lowest public security ebb. Our national poet, Martin Carter, made lucidly clear, and I quote, "This is the dark time, the season of oppression, dark metal, and tears. This is the festival of guns, the carnival of misery. Everywhere, the faces of men are strained and anxious." End of quote. In the national interest, Your Honor, the honorable gentleman who has this responsibility should throw in the towel. Do the honorable thing before more harm is brought to the nation. This incident is even more tragic when we consider that the systems that were due to be in place to ensure the safety of inmates and prison officials failed. Yet there is no attempt to get a clear understanding of the reason for this occurrence. Let us all commit to supporting a structured investigation through a commission of inquiry, since as a parliament, we have a responsibility to the people of this country to carefully and consistently address issues of national concern. Your Honor, let us as lawmakers address that there is a problem which we can solve right here in this honorable house. Your Honor, we can solve the problem. We can establish a commission of inquiry. As members of the National Assembly, we have a responsibility to take the necessary steps or action which will save the less unfortunate and vulnerable tomorrow. Something must be done, and something must be done quickly. This subject is not pretty, and it must not be taken lightly. The family are downstairs, Your Honor, and they are demanding answers, and they expect justice. With these remarks, I submit this motion to the Honorable House.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Just before I call on the next speaker, some clarification. Some members of Parliament have been asking with respect to the last motion, what was the position? It was defeated. Had it succeeded, I would have asked the clerk to have the bill read a first time. I also want to inform you that the Honorable Leader of the Opposition had asked to be excused at 12:30 and to rejoin after lunch virtually, so he's on. And the Honorable Vice President, Dr. Barajagio, is also on virtual. The next speaker is the Honorable Minister of Labor, Mr. Joseph Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me start off where the move of the motion left off, quoting Martin Carter about dark night. You know, Mr. Speaker, between March 2nd, 2020 and August 2nd, 2020, this country had dark nights, dark days, dark weeks, dark months, because of the honorable people over there seeking to deny the Guyanese people their rights. Mr. Speaker, again, the move of the motion is seeking to amend their motion apparently on the floor. And it shows how confused they are over there. When they bring a motion, they don't know what they want out of it. Our resolve clause speaks nothing about the commission of inquiry. Nothing at all. Yet she stands on her feet this afternoon and she's adding another resolve clause. She made passing mention of the commission of inquiry in one of the second whereas clause. But the honorable member, the honorable member has to determine what she really wants. Is it a commission of inquiry, or as a resolve clause state, and let me read, that the National Assembly calls on the government to make full disclosures on all aspects of the tragedy at Lusitnan Prison on the 19th of September 2020, and to declare what actions have been and are being taken to reduce the opportunities for such situations from recurring. The Honorable Minister of Home Affairs will speak to the measures, because I know that there are many measures that will seek to protect inmates and to make the life of prison officers safe as they do their work. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member used several times these three words: truth, justice, accountability. Imagine the APNU AFC coalition speaks about accountability when we have ministers over there wearing gold bands, utilized by the government and the people's money unauthorizedly. Mr. Speaker, justice. What justice you talk about? What truth you talk about? You're incapable over there at the opposition benches of telling truth. That is the reason why the Guyanese people will never, ever again elect you to govern this country, because they know that you're incapable of speaking truth. And I wonder sometimes when they speak over there, why lightning don't strike them down when they use these words. Mr. Speaker, again, the honorable member indicates that there was no information. There was no information from the authorities. But yet, she reads what the prison officers and what the prison service said after the incident. Totally upside it down. One time, we have no information. But with the same breath, the honorable member reads the prison service report of what transpired on the 19th of September. Oh, and then the honorable member went into this conversation about these two deaths. It was tragic. Look, our colleague over there, honorable member Ramjatan, he is responsible for 18 deaths in the prison. Yes, and what have you done after then? You burned down the prison. Even after the Commission of Inquiry recommended what you should have done. And so, Mr. Speaker, when the opposition come here.
Honorable Member, Mr. Jones.
Standing Order 41-6, impugning improper motive. The honourable member is saying that the honourable member Kemraj Ramjatan is responsible for the deaths of the 18 prisoners, which is not so. We beg that it be withdrawn. Thank you.
Honorable Member, Mr. Hamilton. Unlike Ms. Edmond, she was quite careful with respect to how she was assigning responsibility.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member Kemraj Ramjatan, Minister of Public Security, superintended over the prisons when 18 persons lost their lives because of his inability. Mr. Speaker, after the Commission of Inquiry and its recommendation, the Honorable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, failed to have the recommendations
Mr. Speaker.
happen at the prison.
Mr. Speaker.
And after then, we had a fire burning down the prisons. And so,
Honorable Member Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, following up again on Standing Order 41-6, the Honourable Member did not withdraw his statement. So we need to know if he's going to withdraw or if it's going to be stricken from...
If he doesn't withdraw, I've already written here instructing the words to be struck out. Right? So, Honorable Minister, would you like to do the honorable thing and say you withdraw?
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
I have said
Yeah, okay.
that the Honorable Member, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, who had responsibility for the prisons,
Yes,
under
but
his watch,
prior to that, we heard responsible for the deaths. So that's what I'm asking you.
he had
Okay,
responsibility.
Honorable Minister, I'm instructing the clerk that they'll strike out that part of your speech when it comes to it. Thank you very much. You may proceed.
That he had responsibilities for the prison.
Yes, we heard that.
And on his watch, the prisons existed for over 100 and odd years, and they never had 18 deaths. Never in the history of this country. Kemraj Ramjatan, Minister of Natural Security, on his watch, Honorable Member. And even after the Commission of Inquiry, he failed to act on the recommendations. And subsequently, we had a massive fire at the Georgetown prison. So what Mr. Robson Ben is trying to fix today is because of Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan making a prison unavailable on his watch and causing more people than should be at Lusiktan to be at Lusiktan. That was the result of your inability as minister, Mr. Ramjatan. I know you will come to speak and pontificate, so I'm trying to preempt you in your pontification that you were the worst ever to superintend over the security system in this country, based on your record. Mr. Speaker, again,
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 41-4. It shall be offensive for any member to use insultive language about a member of the House. The Honourable Member just referred to the Honourable Member Kemraj Ramjatan as the worst Minister of Government.
Honourable Minister, please allow me to rule. Honourable Member Mr. Jones, I don't see our interpretation. Proceed, Honourable Minister.
I'm stating a fact. Never in the history of this country, any security minister had the prison burned down 2 times and had 18 persons died in one such tragedy. What is insulting about that? I'm restating a fact that this country is aware of. Mr. Speaker, again, the Honourable Member who presented this motion spoke about and lauded the Commission of Inquiry under their watch. But it was just a Commission of Inquiry on paper. What happened after? What happened after that? What happened after that? Is the prison system better when you left government? The answer to that question is no. We are trying to repair it. As I speak to you again, the Honourable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, must know that the Mazaruni prisons on this watch was to be finished. Today, Robson Ben, Minister, he has to finish it. So all the recommendations coming out of the COI, Honourable Member Mr. Ramjatan failed to implement, maybe as the people say, He was busy with the other project. That is a gun license project. Mr. Speaker, look, the APNU AFC, for whatever reason, they enjoy latching on to the demise of citizens to make political points and to create mayhem and havoc. We saw it last year, where they latched on to 2 deaths, and subsequently all kinds of hell broke loose. People were beaten, robbed, houses burned. Who beat them? Look, one of the gentlemen is over there. The man who worked at GW, I asked him who beat them. He was there directing the show. Mr. Speaker, again, they're latching on to the demise, whilst all of us, Mr. Speaker, care about people dying in circumstances like has happened at Luziknan. The People's Progressive Party Civic, we have never utilized the death of a citizen to make political points and to seek to take it to a place where it can create friction in this society. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member again spoke to full disclosure. You know, many of the things that you should have disclosed, it is us in government, we are now making full disclosures. Because you fail to account to the Guyanese people, and you fail to be transparent in government, whether in security or any other sector. And that is the reality. So the honorable member comes and she pontificates, and the honorable member comes and says, I am calling for a COI, and she failed to put it in the motion that she brings here. Apparently it's an afterthought, like the other motion that came before this one. Mr. Speaker, I know that recognizing the dilemma that the security system faces, the government of the People's Progressive Party Civic, we have already taken several actions to deal with the issue of the prison service and all the other security agencies. The minister will speak specifically to them. Unlike the previous government, who neglected to do that. Look, after the fire at the prisons, you know what was important for some people in the government? Was the corruption that will flow to erect back new buildings. And you follow the history. It was sole source. It was not public tender. So, off of the demise of 18 persons, many of the persons who were cronies of the government at that time, they made serious money. And Mr. Ramjatan can attest to the fact he was unpicking, he and Bangles were unpicking the persons who must rehabilitate and who must build the new prison block and who will get concrete work and who will get woodwork.
Mr. Speaker, standing order 41-6, the honorable member, standing order 41-6, the honorable member is imputing improper motive by the former minister, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan. We ask that he withdraw it or it be stricken from the record.
Tell me where the impugning of the improper...
The honorable member, Mr. Hamilton, said that the honorable member Kemraj Ramjatan was handpicking persons to build a block at the prison, which is an offense to the law.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, whilst I cannot...
Honorable Minister, this is an area where I think I can't rule in your favor. Because I have also read a number of statements in the press with respect to some cells being procured for Camp Street, right? And unless I can see where there was the normal processes, I would have to allow
I note your comments, Comrade Speaker, but we are talking here in the National Assembly.
Yes.
And we are guided by the Standing Order Assembly.
Right.
The Honorable Minister have referred to the Honorable Member, Comrade Ramjadan, as in hand-picking contractors to build a prison block, which would be an offense of the law. Therefore, his comments are, yes, sir, impugn improper motive by the Honorable Member. And therefore, in keeping with the standing order, that has to be withdrawn.
I am going to stand by what I said to you. Honorable Minister, continue, please. I also again want to urge that we be careful how we frame
Mr. Speaker,
some of our allegations.
Mr. Speaker, let me say this. Maybe my good friend should go read some of the Auditor General report regarding this matter. Mr. Speaker, the motion before us is the normal, what I called earlier, this vulture culture of the opposition. Vulture culture, where they utilize the demise of citizens to make political hay. And that is what this motion is about. That is what this motion is about. I would dare say, if the honorable member and her colleagues had so much concern about the two gentlemen who lost their lives, they would have come to this National Assembly, the first sitting after, and come before us and maybe seek to persuade the Speaker to have it be a matter of national and urgent importance. Adjournment. They did not do that. So you have no agenda. Mr. Speaker, so it is now finding a new front to battle on. That is what this motion is about. Mr. Speaker, we are, as I said, fixing what Mr. Ramjatan and his government left in a deplorable state vis-a-vis the prison service. And, honorable member, and whatever situation developed because of the overcrowding that was a factor is because of the mismanagement of the previous government of the prison service and the system. That is what Lusignan became what it was not intended to be, thanks to Mr. Ramjatan and his government. That is the reality. Honorable member. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member that presented this motion to us, maybe when she gets up very shortly, she would seek to advise us what really is our desire. What really is our desire? Whether she, as a resolve clause says, she wants disclosure by the minister, which disclosure has already happened, I would dare say. The disclosure has already happened. So she is asking for something that has already happened. Recognizing that maybe some one of our colleagues, when we had the break, advised her that Mr. Robson spoke to this matter. And so she stands on her feet, the honorable member, in the House, as my colleague is saying. Mr. Robson spoke to this matter in a deliberate way, and he will speak again about it, recognizing that what the honorable member is asking for in our resolve clause has already passed. That action has already happened. The honorable member now comes and she says, let me amend my motion on my feet. I now ask you, the government, to have a commission of inquiry about this matter. Mr. Speaker, the minister will speak to the matter and would outline government programs and policy regarding the prison and the total security sector. And I'm sure that very shortly, when the national budget is presented, more of the measures will be outlined. And what I will say as I take my seat is we can commit to the people of Guyana that we will supervise the prison service 100 times better than Mr. Ramjatan, honorable member, and his government supervise. And so, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member that brought the motion is asking whether I'm opposing it or not. I don't know what is your resolve clause. Maybe the resolve clause speaks to National Assembly calling the government to make full disclosure on all aspects of the tragedy. But the honorable member on her feet, I'm making the point, amended this resolve clause. And she called on the government to have a COI. So you have to tell me what you want before you ask me for support. I don't know, honorable member. Is this resolve clause we're going with, or the one you shot on, or the one you on your feet you put before the House? And so, Mr. Speaker, we of the People's Progressive Party Civic, we take the matters as regards rehabilitation and reformation of the prison service and inmates. And let me make this point before I take my seat. Recognizing that there are need for many interventions at the level of the prisons and in the prison service and in dealing with the inmates, and the point the honorable member made, who brought the motion about humanizing people. Already, for the information to this House, the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Home Affairs, we have already convened a meeting to discuss programs relative to skills development for inmates. We have even discussed, beyond that, maybe apprenticeship programs for inmates. So we recognize that the prison service must move from where it is at the moment. And we have to, as the honorable member said, seek to humanize inmates and seek to make them better persons so that when they come out back into the civilian life, they will be able to be productive citizens of this country. So, honorable member, maybe after you wrap up, when you say to us what really you're seeking, maybe then we can discuss whether this makes sense or nonsense. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I note we have 5 speakers to come, and it's 4 o'clock. I suggest we take a short suspension of half an hour, and then we get back here.